What's going on, guys? So we're going to pick up right where we left off yesterday. We got a little introduction into our unit on light, and a couple of things we talked about yesterday is we know light is a form of energy that we can see, and which helps us see. We know that light waves travel in straight lines, and we talked about how when those light waves travel, they tend to do certain things. So when those light waves are traveling and they hit an object, at times they will bounce off of those objects, which really kind of led us into talking about reflection. When light is reflecting, that's what gives us the ability to see anything that we see. Now, sometimes we can see an object just because it puts off its own light, like my computer screen. But for this glue stick does not produce any of its own light. So the reason I am able to see it is because I'm getting artificial light from this lamp above me. Those light waves are traveling, reflecting off this glue stick and into my eyes. And once it goes into my eyes, that travels to my brain, which gives me the ability to see. So I really like this visual that you got right here, which kind of explains that. Now, light does not always reflect. Today, we're going to talk about how sometimes light will refract. So I want you to be able to see the whole thing. There we go. So I'm going to read this off to you, and similar to yesterday, I think this would be something really good to have in your notes, in your notebook, on a sheet of paper somewhere. And if you don't have your notebook, we can staple it in when you get back. But when we're talking about refraction, light refracts or bends as it travels through different mediums. Now, you're going to hear me use that word mediums. Essentially, I'm saying when light travels through different objects, that's what I mean when I'm saying through mediums. So when light is traveling through empty space, it is traveling in straight lines at the same speed. This changes when light has to go through different objects, which is very similar to how we kind of operate. So when light is coming from the sun, can you see me? Through the sky, and remember that sun is a natural source of light. That light's just traveling through the sky at the same speed. That speed does not change until it hits my window. So once it hits my window and it goes through a different medium, it slows down a little bit. And when it slows down, it starts to refract or bend. And once it gets through the window, then it starts traveling at the same speed again until maybe it hits the window on my classroom door. And then once again, it'll slow down, refract, or bend, and keep going. Same thing happens to us. So if you think about going to the beach, one of my favorite things to do is to, once I get to the beach, put my stuff down, run into the ocean. I also like to watch people do that because they run full speed, and then as soon as they hit that water, they get to a different medium. They don't keep going full speed. Eventually, it's almost like hitting a brick wall. They start to slow down a ton, and a lot of the times once they slow down, they might end up face planting. So that same thing happens to us. There we go. It says we can't run as fast through water as we can air. The same thing applies for light waves. When light hits different objects or mediums, the waves slow down, causing them to bend. So refraction is really cool, and I'm sure you've seen it before, but you never actually understood what you were really seeing. And I've got some picture examples here, which are pretty sweet. So when you look at this glass of water, you've got a straw in there, and then the way that it looks, the way that the light is refracted, almost makes it look like you've got two separate straws in there. So if I'm looking here to the left, the actual straw, I'm going to try if you can maybe follow along my cursor, goes around here, but looks as if it is cut in half and into two pieces. That's because when the light's traveling and it hits that glass, it bends and it refracts to almost make it look like you've got two separate straws in there. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail of sometimes when light refracts, it can make things turn the opposite way. It can make it look smaller. It can make it look bigger. That depends on how thick the object is. And I've got another one that'll show you in just a second. But it also depends on how thick the object is with how fast the light can travel through it. So that's a cool example. This one is actually just a block of plastic, just plastic block. And I'm not sure the source of light here. I just know it's an artificial source of light, maybe from a flashlight. But you see it's coming down, traveling in a straight line. As soon as it hits this medium, this thick plastic block, it starts to bend or refract. And then once it leaves this medium out into open space, it once again refracts or bends. That's a great visual. And I really like this next one. If you look at this, I'm assuming this is at some zoo. You've got a polar bear who in reality is swimming right here, but it's as if his body is 2 feet over to the right. And you can imagine at a zoo or wherever you are, if you've been to aquariums before, obviously this is not an aquarium, but that glass is going to be super, super thick because obviously they want it to be as safe for the animals and the people as possible. So you can see how thick this glass is or whatever this material is, that when the light hits this, how thick it is, it refracts a ton to almost make it look like you've got 2 completely separate polar bears here. So even though reflection and refraction sound very similar, completely different. Remember, reflection is what allows us to see when light bounces off an object into our eyes. Refraction is when that light is traveling, it hits a different object or a different medium, and that light bends. That's what we call refraction. So what I want you to spend the majority of your time on is, if I can stop sharing, I've got an assignment for you to complete underneath the video for you to complete today. And then tomorrow there is one more thing that we're going to talk about with what light can do when it travels. Sometimes it reflects, sometimes it refracts, something else it can do as well. On yesterday's announcement, I included a website, ton of cool information on there, facts, there's games, there's pictures. Not something you have to do, but see if maybe you can come to the video tomorrow with an idea of what we're going to talk about. So I know this is short and sweet, but again, I wanted you to be able to spend most of your time on your assignment. And if you have any questions, you guys know how to get in contact with me. Best of luck, and we'll see you a little bit later.